What if everything you were taught about money was, well, incomplete?
Yeah, what if that standard advice, school, job, save, buy a house, what if that wasn't really the path to building actual wealth?
That exact question is really at the heart of the source material we're digging into today. It's excerpts from Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Super popular, sometimes controversial too.
Right, and the whole book is structured around this contrast he sets up between two father figures in his life.
There's his actual dad, highly educated, government job, seems secure. The quote, poor dad.
And then his best friend's dad didn't finish high school, an entrepreneur, self-made, the rich dad.
And the real difference, the book argues, wasn't just income level. It was their whole philosophy about money, how they thought about it, how they managed it, and crucially, what they taught.
It's a really interesting way to look at different financial mindsets and, the paths they lead down.
Totally. So our mission here in this deep dive is to kind of cut through all the noise around the book, unpack those key differences in thinking, and pull out the really important insights.
The stuff that might be genuinely game-changing if you haven't encountered it before.
Exactly. We want to help you understand what this rich dad perspective offers that you often just don't get from traditional financial advice. Okay, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
So according to the source, it's like the number one rule, the absolute foundation for getting rich. It sounds almost deceptively simple in the book.
It really does. But the book hammers it home. You must know the difference between an asset and a liability. And then you buy assets. That's the rule.
Okay, definitions. How does the book break down asset versus liability? Simply.
Super simple. An asset puts money in your pocket,
Liability.
takes money out of your pocket. End of story.
Seems clear enough. But then the source goes on to show how most people, maybe without realizing it, get this completely backwards. Can you walk us through those cash flow patterns he describes?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the poor and middle class, the pattern looks something like this. Money comes in, usually from a job, right? Salary. Then, boom, it flows straight out. Taxes, rent or mortgage, food, car payments, utilities, just expenses.
Okay.
And often when their income goes up, they don't build assets. They buy things they think are assets, but really they're liabilities that just increase the outflow. A bigger house payment, a fancier car loan, more credit card debt.
So the money comes to the front door and rushes right out the back, maybe even faster if they upgrade their liability.
Exactly. It's an outflow pattern. Now, contrast that with the pattern described for the rich. Their main income source isn't necessarily a salary, it's their assets.
Okay, so where's the money coming from?
Things like rental income from properties, dividends from stocks, interest from bonds or loans, maybe royalties from intellectual property. Money flows in from these assets. That income covers their living expenses, sure, but the really crucial part is the leftover money gets plowed back into buying more assets. So assets generate income, which buys more assets, which generate more income. It's an inflow and growth pattern.
Right, this is where it gets really provocative because it takes aim at something almost everyone believes, the house example.
Oh, yeah.
Most people are told your house is your biggest asset. But based on this definition,
It's usually a liability. Think about it. Does your primary residence put cash in your pocket each month? For most people, no way.
it's the opposite. Mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, upkeep, repairs. It's constant outflow.
Exactly. It might go up in value over, decades, but month to month, it's taking money out. A new car, even clearer, loses value the second you drive it off the lot and costs you money every month.
It's fascinating how that one simple disjunction, does it put money in or take money out, changes everything about where you should focus your financial energy.
Totally. If you don't get that fundamental difference, you could spend your whole life acquiring things that you think are making you wealthy, but are actually keeping you poor.
And the source says this misunderstanding is basically what keeps people stuck in, what's the phrase he uses? The rat race.
Ah, the rat race. Yeah. We all kind of intuitively know what that feels like, don't we?
That hamster wheel feeling. Working harder, maybe earning more, but not actually getting ahead financially.
That's precisely it. It's the cycle where your main income is your job, your salary. And as that salary goes up, what happens? Your expenses and your liabilities tend to go up right along with it.
Get a raise, buy a bigger house, nicer car, more stuff. Lifestyle creep.
Right. The book points out that expenses just seem to expand to meet income for most people. Plus, higher income often means higher taxes, too.
So more money comes in, but it just fuels a bigger outflow, often into things that create more ongoing expenses. It's a trap.
It is. And you're stuck because your income relies on you trading your time for money, and the stuff you own is costing you money instead of making you money. You become totally dependent on that paycheck just to keep the whole thing afloat.
Which raises a massive question then. If just earning a higher salary doesn't automatically lead to freedom and might even dig you deeper into the hole, what's the alternative strategy?
Well, that leads directly to the next big idea in the book, minding your own business.
Okay, what does that mean exactly? It doesn't necessarily mean quitting your job, right?
Not necessarily, no. It's more about where you focus your mental and financial energy. It means shifting from solely focusing on your job, your income column, to actively building your asset column.
Ah, so separating your profession from your actual business.
Yes. The source says most people confuse the two. They think their profession, being a doctor, a teacher, a manager, is their business. But from the rich dad viewpoint, your profession is how you generate cash flow, maybe initially, but your business is your collection of assets.
Otherwise, you spend your life working hard to make someone else rich. Your
Yeah.
boss, the government, the banks.
Right. The rich dad perspective is that real financial security, real freedom, comes from building up that asset base, assets that generate income whether you show up to work or not.
What kind of assets does the book specifically mention?
Things like businesses that don't need you there day to day, ones run by managers or systems.
Real estate's a big one, isn't it? Specifically, income-producing properties.
Definitely. Rental properties generating positive cash flow. Also, paper assets like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, notes.
And intellectual property, like royalties from books or patents.
Exactly. Things that can earn money passively over time.
So the actionable advice here seems to be, keep your day job, especially at first, use it to pay the bills, but consciously start directing time, learning, and money towards acquiring real assets.
Not just liabilities disguised as status symbols or personal stuff that loses value.
Yeah, keep expenses down, pay off liabilities, and focus on building that solid base of things that actually put money in your pocket.
That's the core strategy. Minding your own business, which is your asset column.
Okay, another really eye-opening part of the source material tackles taxes and the role of corporations. This gets interesting.
It does. The book puts forward a view, maybe a bit provocative, that the whole tax the rich idea historically hasn't quite worked out that way.
How so?
The argument presented is that, well, the wealthy don't just sit back and pay more tax. They have resources, they have knowledge, they react, they find legal ways to structure things to minimize their tax burden. And often it's the middle class who rely mostly on salary income who end up carrying a heavier relative load.
And the key tool discussed for minimizing taxes legally is the corporation.
That's the main vehicle highlighted. The book mentions corporations go way back, originally for limiting risk, like on old sailing ship ventures.
But the big advantage today, according to the source, is taxes.
Exactly. It boils down to the order of operations. As an employee, you earn money, then the government takes taxes out first, and you live on whatever's left.
We all know that feeling.
Right. But a corporation, operating correctly, it earns income, then it can pay its legitimate business expenses first, and then it gets taxed on the profit that's left over.
Ah, so eligible expenses come out before the tax man gets his share.
That's presented as a fundamental advantage. It means certain costs, potentially things related to business operations, maybe travel, vehicles, insurance, depending on the structure and rules, can be paid with pre-tax dollars.
The book gives some fairly bold examples, like structuring vacations as board meetings, car payments as corporate expenses.
Yeah, it pushes the envelope on examples to make the point. But the underlying insight is really about financial literacy. It's not just about earning and saving. It's about understanding the rules of the system, tax laws, corporate structures, and using them legally to your advantage. Knowledge is power here.
Okay, so we've got assets, minding your business, understanding taxes. Sounds good on paper. But the book dives deep into why people don't actually do these things. What are the big internal roadblocks?
Fear is a huge one, just plain old fear. Fear of losing money, fear of not being able to pay bills, fear of being fired from the safe job, fear of starting something new and failing. Even fear of what other people will think if you step outside the norm.
And financially, how does that fear play out?
It keeps people trapped. They play it safe. They stay in jobs they might hate because it feels secure. The source argues fear makes people react emotionally, panic, sell in a downturn, miss opportunities because they seem too risky instead of thinking clearly and rationally. Doubt, he says, is incredibly expensive.
There are some anecdotes in there, right? Like chicken little syndrome, running around scared, missing the real picture.
Exactly. Or the flip side, the story of Colonel Sanders getting rejected over 1,000 times before someone finally said yes to his chicken recipe. That's about pushing through fear and doubt. He also mentions people being too afraid to even investigate something like tax lien certificates offering high returns purely out of uninformed fear and expensive doubt indeed.
Okay, fear's one. What's next? Laziness.
Hmm.
But not maybe in the way we usually think of it.
Right, it's often disguised laziness. The book suggests that people who are constantly busy are often the laziest in a way. They use busyness as an excuse to avoid confronting the really important, maybe uncomfortable things.
Like dealing with their finances.
Yeah,
Or maybe even problems in other areas of life.
precisely. Avoiding figuring out your money situation, avoiding learning what you need to learn, avoiding taking action because you're too busy with the day-to-day grind that's portrayed as a form of laziness.
Yeah.
There's an example of a businessman so busy working he lost touch with his family.
Oof. Okay, fear, laziness. And the third one.
Ignorance, just not knowing. A lack of financial intelligence.
So people are operating based on maybe outdated advice.
Yeah, relying on those old rules like go to school, get a safe job, save your money, diversify your savings, without really understanding why or if those rules still fully apply, or if there are other potentially better strategies. The book has that great line, there is gold everywhere, most people are not trained to see it, financial smarts aren't innate, they have to be developed.
Which leads us right into the importance of financial education, but maybe a different kind of education and developing specific skills.
Exactly. It's about building what the book terms financial IQ. It's not just about being book smart, it's understanding the language of money, how markets work, the basics of accounting and law, investment strategies.
And it's not just knowing, it's doing, right? Courage comes up again.
Yes, knowledge plus the courage to act on it.
And this is where the source really challenges the traditional focus on hyperspecialization in education, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Conventional schooling often pushes you to become very, very good at one specific thing, to be a specialist employee or a self-employed specialist S.
Like a lawyer, doctor, programmer.
Right. But the argument is that building significant wealth, especially in the business B or investor I quadrants, requires broader skills, particularly management skills.
Management of what specifically?
3 key areas: management of cash flow, understanding the numbers, management of systems, business processes, and management of people.
And there's one more skill he really emphasizes, which might surprise people.
Communication skills, especially sales and marketing. Understanding how to sell, how to communicate value, how to influence. He tells a story about knowing a brilliant writer who wasn't a best-selling author because they hated selling, or a consultant saying successful people are often just one skill away from massive wealth.
It makes sense, like the McDonald's example. Their success isn't really about having the world's best hamburger.
It's about having incredible, replicable business systems and marketing. That's the point. It's often the system and the ability to sell it, not just the core product or skill.
So the practical advice then becomes, look beyond just the paycheck when choosing work. Ask, what skills will I learn here?
Right. Seek jobs or even side gigs like the network marketing example he gives, not just for the immediate income, but for the opportunity to develop these crucial broader skills: sales, communication, leadership, understanding systems.
This is where it really starts to challenge conventional career advice, you know. It
Right.
suggests building a more diverse skill set, not just climbing one narrow ladder. Really interesting stuff.
It definitely flips the script on traditional career paths.
Okay, so armed with this idea of financial IQ and broader skills, the book does get into some more specific practical strategies for actually building that asset column.
Yes. And one habit that gets a lot of emphasis is pay yourself first.
Right. Explain that again. It sounds simple, but the psychology seems key.
The idea is when income comes in, the very first bill you pay is your allocation to your asset column. You set aside money for investments or asset purchases before you pay your regular expenses, taxes, or creditors.
But wait, wouldn't that mean you might not have enough left over to pay the actual bills? That sounds stressful.
It can be, initially, but the book argues that's actually the point. That pressure, that feeling of being a bit short after investing in yourself, becomes a powerful motivator. It forces you to think, okay, how can I generate more income? How can I cut unnecessary expenses?
So instead of weakening yourself by paying everyone else first and taking whatever scraps are left, you prioritize your future wealth, and the pressure makes you stronger and more creative financially.
That's the framing. It builds financial discipline and forces you to find solutions rather than just managing scarcity.
Okay, powerful concept. What other strategies?
Paying professionals well, finding good accountants, attorneys, brokers. They aren't just costs. The right advisors can save you or make you far more money than they cost by helping you navigate taxes, find deals, structure things properly.
So don't be penny wise and pound foolish, trying to DIY everything if it's not your expertise, like trying to sell your own house without knowing the market or negotiation tactics.
Exactly. And the book adds a tip. Look at the professional's own financial success. Are they successfully building their own assets using the advice they give?
That's a smart filter. And then there's the idea of actively looking for opportunities, right? Not just waiting for them.
Yes, back to that idea that gold is everywhere. Train your mind to see potential deals. Look for bargains, especially when markets are down and everyone else is scared. The source emphasizes being willing to make offers, even low ones. You don't get deals if you don't make
And
offers.
thinking bigger scale.
Yeah, looking for opportunities that offer economies of scale. Maybe combining purchasing power with others for investments. The underlying message is, don't let small thinking keep you playing a small game.
And finally, learning from others.
Absolutely. Study financial history. Read about people who built significant wealth. The book mentions Buffett, Trump, others. Understand their strategies, their mindset, and see what you can emulate. Find financial heroes.
Okay, moving beyond specific tactics, the source material then kind of zooms out again to talk about education in a much broader sense, not just school.
Right. It introduces this idea of 4 dimensions of development needed for success: mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual.
And the critique of traditional schooling fits in here.
Yeah, the argument is that schools focus almost entirely on the mental, getting good grades, acquiring technical knowledge, which is fine, but it mainly prepares you for the E, employee, or S, self-employed, quadrants.
Where you work for money.
Exactly. But it often neglects the emotional development needed to handle risk, rejection, and uncertainty. Things crucial for the B, business owner and I, investor quadrants. And it might not foster the spiritual strength to find and follow your own unique path, even when it's difficult.
The author shares a personal story about this, doesn't he? About needing more than just toughness.
He does. He talks about being mentally and physically tough from military training, but then attending a personal development seminar and having this big emotional release, realizing he needed to develop those other aspects of himself to truly succeed financially and find his purpose.
And this whole line of thinking led to the creation of the Cache for Flow game.
That's how it's presented. He designed the game specifically to be an educational tool that engages the whole person: mind, body, emotions, spirit.
How does a board game do that?
By letting you simulate financial decisions, buying assets, dealing with market changes, making choices with play money, you experience the emotional ups and downs of winning and losing, you see the direct results of your strategies, you learn accounting basics almost by accident. It provides instant feedback in a safe environment.
And it's not just playing the game solo, is it? There's a community aspect.
Yes. The Cache Flow Clubs. The idea is they create a supportive community, a kind of shelter, where people learning these new financial ideas can practice, share experiences, learn from each other's mistakes and successes. Because changing your financial life is often about changing deep-seated habits and beliefs, and community helps with that.
So ultimately, where does all this lead? The source seems to suggest it's about more than just accumulating money.
Definitely. The book loops back to the idea that the real journey isn't just about getting rich, it's about finding your path in life. He uses the quote, "The path is the goal," meaning using financial intelligence not just to get wealthy, but to design a life that aligns with your purpose, your values, not letting the need for money dictate how you live your life.
And the Cache Flow Quadrant Framework, ESBI, is a tool for that journey.
It's presented as a map. E for employee, S for self-employed small business, B for big business owner, systems work for you. I for investor, money works for you. Understanding where your income comes from now, which quadrant, helps you chart a course towards where you want to be to gain more control and freedom.
And the key insight is that moving towards B&I requires different skills.
Different skills, different mindset, different emotional capacity. But mastering those B&I skills is generally shown as the faster route to financial independence. Even for retirement, someone who's been an E their whole life needs to learn I quadrant skills to make their savings last. The example used of Bill's water business, set up so he didn't have to be there, that's a classic B quadrant illustration.
Okay, so let's recap this deep dive. We've explored excerpts from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, focusing on that core asset versus liability distinction.
How misunderstanding that fuels the rat race.
The absolute necessity of financial education beyond just school smarts.
The concept of minding your own business by building your asset column.
Recognizing and tackling those internal hurdles like fear and laziness.
The need for broader skills like management and sales.
Some specific wealth building tactics like paying yourself first and seeking deals.
And how this all connects to a bigger picture of personal development across mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual lines, ultimately about finding your own path using frameworks like the Cash-Flow Quadrant.
Wow. Yeah. We covered a lot. Our aim was really to give you a condensed, useful look at the key ideas presented in the source material.
Hopefully a helpful shortcut to some potentially powerful concepts.
The source leaves us with this idea. Money is only an idea. It's what is in your head that determines what is in your hands.
So building on that, maybe here's a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. What specific idea about money, maybe one you've held for years, could you challenge or even change starting today that might begin to shift your own financial reality?